Welcome to the Idle Talk podcast. My name's Peyton, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Jacob. And today, we are recapping the season premiere of Survivor 47. It was a 2-hour premiere, and a lot of stuff went down that we are excited to discuss, analyze, and break down. Of course, there's a spoiler warning for Survivor 47, Episode 1. If you have not seen it, I would recommend not listening to this episode quite yet. All that being said, Jacob, what did you think of the very first episode of Survivor 47?
I thought it was a really good first episode, a really good season opener, season premiere. Something that I think that I noticed while watching the episode, and something that I think I've noticed since 45 leading into 46, I feel like the production value has really stepped up in terms of the shots and the editing and things like that. So, like when the first challenge for their supplies starts and you get that drone shot following I don't remember who was running. I want to say it was Kyle.
Yeah.
Of Kyle running into the jungle and you have like a racing drone following him. I thought that was really cool. So from the production standpoint, I thought it was a really good episode, but there was a lot that happened and I'm excited to talk about it. And it was an entertaining first episode of 47. And if this episode is an indicator of how the season is going to go, then we're in for a very interesting season.
Yeah, I will say nothing went according to the way we expected, which is part of the course for Survivor. And I think you would think after 47 seasons, we would be prepared to expect the unexpected. And we tell ourselves to expect the unexpected. And I feel like I'm never prepared for what Survivor throws our way. And so I think we just have to dive right in. Where do you want to start, Jacob?
I want to start by talking about the change in the Sweat versus Savvy challenge, because that's kind of one of the first things that happens in the episode. So, well, actually, I guess before Sweat versus Savvy, we can talk about the yellow curse being temporarily lifted by the yellow tribe winning their supplies. So Yellow tribe wins their supplies. We'll learn the actual tribe names eventually, but they're still kind of like...
Yeah.
I know one of them's Gata.
Yeah, it's Gata, Tuku, and Lavo.
Okay, we'll try and use the actual names. So the Gata tribe / yellow tribe wins their supplies.
They gotta win.
Forcing the... I already forgot. The Lavo
and Tuku.
Forcing the Lavo and Tuku tribes to have to compete against each other to win the second set of supplies, and then one of them will be empty-handed. So what's been done previously since the start of the new era is there's this Sweat versus Savvy challenge, and I think everyone's kind of been pretty vocal that they don't love the Sweat versus Savvy challenge. And then after what happened in 46 with Jelinski and Q, I think they just decided to move on because there's never going to be another moment like that. So they just decided to move on. And we get this cool new challenge where the two losing tribes elect one person from their tribe to go head to head against one person from the other tribe. And I don't know I think we had texted a little bit about the challenge, but I really liked the challenge because it felt very reminiscent of old school Survivor challenge. It felt like running into the jungle for the trivia, holding a torch, grabbing a key from like answering a trivia question. I don't know why. It just gave me those vibes. So I really enjoyed the challenge. If you didn't watch the episode for some reason, essentially what the challenge was is the contestants had like a sash and they had to go into the jungle and find keys where they had like a picture of where the key was in the jungle. But I don't know if you want to give your thoughts on the challenge. I really enjoyed it.
It reminded me very specifically because the trivia challenge has been done. So we're still kind of, watching through the early seasons, obviously. So I don't know how many times they do it, but it reminded me very specifically of season 1 when they're running around with the camcorders.
Yeah, I thought of that too.
I was thinking of Rudy running around with the camcorder, and he gets to the trivia question. I don't know. And he goes to the next one. It felt kind of like that, where obviously they're not doing it at night and they don't have a torch, but that same sort of vibe where they're running and they're on a scavenger hunt. I didn't quite get the parallel that Jeff gives where he says it's like an Indiana Jones adventure.
Yeah, I didn't get that either.
I don't see that. I'm not with you there, Jeff. I don't see the Indiana Jones adventure. I see Dora the Explorer, maybe, but I did think I like that it feels fair, kind of. And Jeff said this in On Fire, that it was a challenge that no matter who went into it, that it was going to be neck and neck. And I think that is true. I think that we even saw, TK went into it for Tuku, and he is obviously an ex-NFL player, a very physically fit person, where if it was just, like a sweat challenge, he would have a clear advantage, And Aisha is a Survivor podcaster. So if it was...
I'm pretty sure her name is pronounced Asia.
Asia?
That's how they were pronouncing it during that. Yeah, that's how they were pronouncing it during the show.
Sorry. Asia is a Survivor podcaster. So if it was like a Survivor savvy type task, like with Hunter that one time, having to put the seasons in order or something like that, she would have a clear advantage in that case. So it wasn't a challenge where it felt like there was a clear advantage one way or the other in any specific thing, other than I think maybe the only problem is that it does feel a little luck based. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know how much what the wilderness is like there, what that environment's like, but it does kind of feel like it's maybe a little bit luck of the draw, like how lucky you are finding those locations. But I like it more than Sweat versus Savvy. I do, however, wonder, and before we move off of this, how do you feel about the tribes nominating the person to go off themselves instead of
picking their opponents,
instead of
basically?
Either the winning tribe picking who goes off, like it's a journey, because it basically is a journey, or Tuku picking for Lavo and Lavo picking for Tuku. Normally when something like this happens, somebody else is making the decision of who goes.
Yeah. I honestly, I think I like that they got to choose for themselves, mainly because it's day one. And so the person getting to go is making the risk for themselves this early on, that I'm going to be away from camp. I'm going to be away from the first social interactions on the beach, and I might not win these supplies, and my tribe might hate me for that. So for that reason, I like it better that they're doing self-nominations, because then they're understanding the risks. And since it's so early in the game, they're at least getting to have that sort of self-authority in that. So I kind of like it for that reason. I think if you let the other tribes decide, it's just so early in the game that you really wouldn't be able to make much of a choice other than, I don't know, I'm just going to pick this person. So that's why I like that they get to choose themselves a little bit more, at least for this stage in the game.
Yeah. I don't necessarily have a preference one way or the other. That is just something that when they announced the way it was going to work, I was expecting the winning tribe to choose who was going to go off. That was what I thought was happening, and it wasn't. And so I was surprised, because that is not the way any sort of journey has ever happened before. And so it makes me wonder if journeys might go down a little differently this season, or if that's going to just have been for this first journey.
Yeah. So after the challenge for camp supplies, we have all of the tribes returning to their beaches and getting their first glimpses of how people are going to play the game and their social interactions and things like that. And the thing that shocked me the most, one of the things that shocked me the most, was Gabe latching to Sue immediately. That was something that I didn't expect. I don't really know. I understand, like, he, in his pregame, he said that was like his strategy.
Yep.
Was he was going to find the old person because no one else would want to work with them. So it's like an easy number one ally, which I understand.
Very smart. I will give him that. Very, very smart strategy, because it is true, is that typically the eldest person on the tribe is usually on the outs early. That's just kind of the way it works.
Yeah. So I thought that was a interesting strategy, because I wasn't sure how Sue was going to fare, but hey, she found a number one ally. But I think the most interesting stuff to happen on day one is that 2 beware advantages were found. So I will let you talk about the structure of the beware advantages, but how did you feel about the kind of Russian doll type clues for the beware advantage?
Yeah, I really like this twist, because it feels like a great natural evolution to last season's beware advantages. I think that it obviously felt very similar in that you have to go, through a certain number of steps out in the open to acquire your, key to get to this box that's buried in a public path. And then you unlock the box, and inside should be the idol. They've seen that from the season before, and they know that the idol's in there. And so this was all going down, and in my head, I'm like, all right, cool. This is what they did last season. In my head, though, I'm also kind of wondering, is there going to be an idol in here? Because I'm not convinced that they're just going to do the same exact thing in back-to-back seasons, especially when there's been a year break between filming. Like, they didn't film 46 and 47 back to back, So because of that, I felt like there was going to be a twist inside. I did not expect it to be another box. So when, Gabe is the first one to get the beware advantage and open it. So he opens his box. Inside of it is another box with another scroll and a little hole on that box, and their instructions says that idol that he has received is good for 1 tribal council, but he can essentially wager it and put it inside the box and go off and continue on his quest, and it will upgrade to be good for 3 tribal councils. And then from there, he takes that gamble, puts it in the box, which I love that mechanic, how it's the same idol. You just put it in the box. I thought that was so smart. I loved it. It's just like very clever, even though it's so simple. But I loved it. So it's not, 3 idols deep or whatever. It's just you keep putting it in. Mm-hmm. You're literally choosing to lock it yourself. He has it in his hand, and he's intentionally having to lock it away. So he puts it inside the lockbox, takes the next clue, has to continue on the quest, then eventually, finishes it, unlocks it, and there's a third box, which the second box, so the box within the first box, that one appeared, and I was like, wow, okay, good job, Survivor, that's great. I was like surprised, but not that surprised. That seems like something Survivor would do. I was not expecting the box within the box within the box. Was not prepared for that one. And so I was like, wow, like, that's crazy. But I love it. And it turns it into a full-fledged immunity idol, good until the final 5. But he has to keep working for it. And you don't know what tasks you're going to have to continue. And up to that point, bro's kind of just, like, it's only been 2 days at this point, and he's been running around crazy, expecting that they might go to tribal council and really wants us to vote and all this sort of stuff. So he decides to just, like, play it cool, take the 3-day idol, and not keep going. And so that's kind of the way they work, just to summarize it if anyone didn't watch the episode or forgot or whatever. But I guess to get back to my thoughts, I really like the way the box mechanic works. I like how they have to go pursue these things in the public. I am not a fan of the way Gabe or Rome played with these beware advantages.
Yeah.
I don't think either of them did it well. I think Gabe did it better than Rome 100%. Rome, I think we're going to talk about power rankings in a little bit. If I was going through all 17 people remaining, Rome is probably at the bottom, which is surprising considering something else that we're about to discuss.
Yeah, I was gonna say we need to talk about, for one, when Gabe goes to get his key, that TK just walks up on him ripping vines off of this cliff ledge. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And he like sees the key up there, and he's like, I found this key." And he's like, "Oh, you think there's a beware advantage around here somewhere that you need to find the key to get the beware advantage?" So I don't know how that's going to unfold, if he's going to tell him anything else about the key.
He's not, because, well, in his confessional, Gabe thinks that he has absolutely fooled TK. And TK has basically said that he's just like very suspicious of Gabe. And it very much comes across like TK does not trust Gabe from catching him do that. He's like, I would have just preferred him tell me. And then he like is unlocking his box and he drops it down the cliff.
And everyone hears it.
And everyone on camp hears it. And they're like, that didn't sound like a tree. Like, what is he doing back there?
So just being a clown. But then the worst is Rome, who is running around with like a chicken who has his head chopped off, running around looking. And all 5 of his other tribe mates are like together, knowing that Rome is alone, doing God knows what. But so he finds the beware advantage, decides, okay, I'm going to wait till night because he has to go dig up the key in a public, it's like on the path to the water well. So it's a public space. So he's like, okay, I'm not going to dig up the key right now. I'm going to wait till nighttime to go do it when everyone's asleep. So he does it, gets the key, and then it's the day. And instead of again waiting for more incognito time, he's like, no, I'm going to go do it now. So he goes off by himself. Everyone else at camp is like, okay, he's alone. He's probably looking or already has something. So all 5 of his tribe mates go looking for him. And the clue for the idol is at the bottom of the water well. So he's like waist into the water well. The shot of that is so funny, where he's like literally bottom up, like legs in the air, digging in the bottom of the water well,
which is kind of gross.
And he gets it.
I feel like, because
now he's like,
I feel like he was supposed to get it with the water scoop,
and not just like shove his arms down the water that everyone else is going to be drinking.
I don't know if it was secured down in there, because he went down in and pulled out a rock, but I don't know if there were I don't know how the water well's constructed, but I kind of think he was probably able to get it out with the ladle.
Yeah. But anyways, the thing that was crazy to me is that his tribe sees him do this. They see him at the water well doing whatever, and then instead of like owning up to it, he just walks away.
Don't be suspicious.
It doesn't say anything.
Don't be suspicious.
He's like,
he literally just turns around and walks away, drenching.
And he's like wet from sticking his arms down the water well. Everyone sees him, and he just walks away.
And he couldn't even play it up. His water bottle his canteen is empty at this point, because he just got done drenching a log to reveal a clue, which was pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. That was pretty sick. He could have just filled up his water. Why not stay there and fill up your water? Why run away when you see them come? He is so ambitious, which I guess if we're going to find a positive quality, we'll commend that. But he is also just phenomenally socially out of step with everyone in his tribe, and just not playing the game at all in a way that is going to result in him making it to the merge. I just do not see it.
Mm-hmm.
And if he makes it to the merge, say Lavo which is the red tribe that he's on, if they make it to the merge because maybe they don't go to tribal or something, nobody on his tribe is going to trust him, and they will tell everyone there about that, and he'll just be on the bottom of the merge tribe, and he'll be an easy boot post-merge. It'll be the sort of thing where everybody's just going to view him as sneaky and a snake, and he might actually be able to go pretty far, where it's sort of a Venus type situation where everybody perceived Venus, as sneaky and cunning and a snake and can't trust her or whatever. But we know that she's we know she's that, so we know we can get her out at some point. She's not going to win, whatever, So maybe he can make it far just because nobody cares enough to vote him out. But it's the sort of thing where I just think he has absolutely tanked his game because of complete lack of social awareness.
Yeah.
One thing that I want to ask about this, before we move on, do you think in this new era of Beware Advantages, and especially the way these Beware Advantages have played in especially 45 and really 46 and 47 now, do you think that it is almost a necessity to share with one other person that you have a Beware Advantage? Do you think you have to bring someone in? Or can you do it alone?
I feel like it depends on how you think your position in the tribe is. I feel like if you think you're on the bottom and want a good way to build trust with someone, then I would bring someone in on it. Honestly, I feel like it's a hard question to say.
I'm asking kind of more as to physically get a hold of the idol. It almost feels like you need a partner in crime. Like Gabe had to do that with Sue. He needed a second person. We saw that last season with Tiffany and Kenzie. Yeah. They needed, and honestly, I feel like that's probably purposeful on production's part.
That's a lot of P's. Because if you think about it, I think it's funny how my views on the Beware Advantages have changed, because when I originally watched 41 when it came out back in 2020 or 2021, I did not like it. I was like, this is stupid, this is dumb, and I don't like it at all. But especially after hearing Jeff talk about the reasons for the change, and now that we've sat with it for a while, I do really like it, because it's almost like unbalanced in the sense that you can just find this immunity idol, like in the previous seasons, like in 39 and before. You could just find this immunity idol and then bam, you're safe from a vote. And there's no well, you used to have to do tasks to get it. And then Russell Hantz threw that all out the window. Yeah. And so but they weren't hidden any more than they already. Correct. After Russell Hantz, they didn't get more hidden. They just stopped giving clues. Yes. But it's still, even though you could just skip the clues, it was always assumed you had to do the clues. That you and Russell just said, why do we have to do the clues? They're already hidden. There were no locks. There were no doors. There were no, there was nothing gatekeeping. And so production said, okay, well, let's just get rid of the clues. We're just going to hide the idols. If production had at that point in time said, Russell just outsmarted our system, and for heroes versus villains, they said, okay, fair play, good move, Russell. Let's institute some locks. And then basically implemented Beware Advantages, or an early form of Beware Advantages, where you have to unlock specific steps. And maybe you don't lose your vote. Because really, I think that was the part of Beware Advantages that turned a lot of people off. And I still, that's still the part that I take it or leave it with me. But I kind of like, it's growing on me, that added risk reward aspect, especially because it's not permanent. It's just until you get the idol. But
and you choose to take it. But I think that if after season 19 for Heroes vs. Villains, if they had decided instead of just getting rid of clues, they instituted a more rigorous system for getting idols, we would have ended up at Beware Advantages a whole lot earlier. And Survivor would probably have evolved a whole lot faster. But instead, they just nixed them. And then I agree with you in that path that Survivor took. Idols became overpowered in that sense, and then people became really scared of them, and there became like just a whole new approach to the way people played with idols. And so in the new era, when they were rethinking Survivor, they decided to change that. And so I think 41, 42, I don't think Beware Advantages really worked that well. I think 43 and 44, I really love the way they did them there. I like the bird cage. I really loved that you got the bird cage and you've got the beads on the bracelet from everyone's backpack.
Yeah, I really like that one.
I thought that those two were the best Beware Advantages they've done yet. And I really want that style to come back in. And I know that that's hard to come up with things like that every single season. But I would love if they did a box one season. Maybe it's like even season, you get a box. Odd season, you get something crazy. But the bird cage was epic. And you can only do that once. Like, I get that. You can't break out the bird cages again, probably. You'd have to really shake it up. But it was really interesting and very cool to see it. And I don't even think that they got used to their full potential. They definitely didn't get used to their full potential. But the concept of it, I think, was very, very cool. And so I like the way that production is playing around with these Beware Advantages. And I think there's a lot of interesting room to run with them. So I like the idea of this box inside of a box inside of a box. Before we move off of it, if you were Gabe, would you have stayed with the 3 or would you have gone for the final idol?
I would have gone for the final. If I'm like, I'm already this far, I'm going to go to the end. And especially it's day 2. Like, come on.
You've got a lot of time.
I would go for it.
Yeah. I definitely would have gone for the final idol. Like, for sure. Especially if you're speed running that, because I would have been slow playing it a lot. At least I think. I would want to slow play it a lot more. I would want to try to be getting through a box a day, or maybe every 2 days, trying to go really slow, and then only go fast if you're on the chopping block. You know, if your tribe, like if your tribe loses, okay, maybe we scramble. Me and my ally, let's go run and get it if we feel like we need the vote. But I don't think that he felt like he was in a place where even he was going to be voted out. So I don't know. But I agree. I feel like you go for broke.
Yeah. So we can move on and start talking about the immunity challenge, the first immunity challenge of the season. The yellow curse comes back full force. If I ever get on Survivor and I'm given a yellow buff, I'm leaving. I'm just walking off the beach. I'm like, no thanks, Jeff. I don't want to play this season. I'm gone.
It's so interesting because yellow used to be a pretty good tribe to have.
It's just a new era.
In the new era, it's not, especially in recent yellow seasons. Ever since the Lulu losers, it's been bad.
Yeah. So yellow tribes not doing great. They get their first loss, but there's not really much to talk about in the immunity challenge. It's more what is in the aftermath of the immunity challenge. Well, and a little bit in the middle of it. But
yeah, the boats flipping.
Yeah, the boats flipping is crazy. So they're carrying these like big heavy chests through the ocean, and their boats just capsize like multiple times, which was really funny to watch and insane. But what was also insane was how big of a lead the red tribe had, that they completely cut out them solving the puzzle. It was like they got to the puzzle, cut, puzzle's done. That's how far ahead they were.
I genuinely, because I looked down at my phone, because we were watching, Jacob and I were watching this at the same time, but I was watching it on TV. I have like a antenna, so I was like watching it on CBS,
like satellite
and then
TV.
Jacob's watching it on Paramount Plus, and so because Jacob's streaming it, you were probably a good minute and a half, 2 minutes behind me. I think like you were a good bit behind me, but so every time you texted me, I would have to sit there and think about what the heck you were texting me about, because it had already passed and I was watching something else crazy happen. And so you texted me something and I look down, look at the text. I don't really reply, but I look up and the puzzle's done. And I was like, what did I miss? I was so confused. And then you and then you mentioned it later. And I was like, okay, good. I didn't miss anything. But it was very startling, because I was like, did I miss something important here? Did my TV skip? I was genuinely taken aback, because it was just out of nowhere. The puzzle was done, and I didn't know what happened.
Yeah, so that was crazy. But the craziest thing to happen during the immunity challenge was Yellow, Gata, whatever. They finally get to the puzzle, and it cuts to Andy laying on the floor, and they do that little like blurry animation thing, like when someone passes out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? And people like, okay, we're like, oh my gosh, what happened? I don't know. I thought he was like having a seizure at first. I don't know what was going on, but it cuts to him, and Jeff is like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, he said like, I gave everything.
Yeah, he's like, I gave it everything I had, or something to that extent.
Yeah. So he wasn't really like injured or having like a heat stroke or anything like that. He was just spent and was upset at himself. I think a combination of the two.
It, to me, when I was watching it, it literally looked like he just was giving up. He just laid down and was just done. Just done.
Yeah. Honestly, I could tell whenever he said that, and Jeff could tell that he wasn't actually injured or had a medical emergency, I could tell Jeff was like, okay, bro. Like, whatever.
Yeah, and it also, I think Jeff was also trying to was running in his head, trying to figure out, okay, what do I do with this right now? Because we need, we still need to bring in medical and do all this stuff, but also I think you're just laying down and quitting, because it felt like he was just like, I'm done, I'm quitting, I'm out of here. Like that was the vibe, is where he was just, and the challenge was still happening. It wasn't like the challenge was over. It was mid challenge. They could still win. They were behind, but it wasn't, he took out himself, and he is, according to their tribe, which I'm going to call complete and utter BS on their tribe's reasoning for voting out John Lovett. They say that he is, they're like one of their strongest members, and that they absolutely need him for challenges. I think that's bull. I mean, he pulled himself out of that, laid down, I don't think that you can bank on him contributing in future challenges if he couldn't finish that one. And so I would rather have someone who's not as physically strong and is going to give 100%. And maybe, I think I'm probably getting ahead of ourselves a little bit by me saying this, but I'd rather have someone who's going to give it their all and isn't the most physically gifted than someone who's going to give up at the finish line and is a little bit more physically gifted. Yeah. It definitely felt like that. And then they ended up just, the doctor was just kind of like, he got overheated, which is kind of code for he's fine.
He's fine. Yeah. But the real drama happens when Yellow loses.
Yeah.
And he they're standing at the mat, and then Jeff is obviously like, yo, Andy, you good? What happened back there? And then Andy just, I don't even know what the best word is, but like has a meltdown.
He spirals.
I feel like
just absolutely spirals. Yeah. And he had already, his spiral had started earlier in the episode. We hadn't really discussed it, but the spiral began earlier when so early on in the episode, Andy has aligned himself with John, kind of made John his number one, and then has aligned himself with Rachel, made Rachel his other number one, because he's strategic and has kind of said, you know, I need multiple number ones. I need, you know, people I can trust kind of all around. And then has a panic attack. He doesn't really say it's a panic attack. It's more of a, he's definitely like spiraling at night, but we'll call it, I guess, a panic attack, anxiety attack at night. And he wakes up Rachel in the middle of the night and asks her to leave the shelter and go talk to him. And she says that she is uncomfortable doing that. And she says that she doesn't want to. She says that it looks bad as far as like tribe dynamics go, and that she thinks it's a bad idea.
Which she's right.
Like, all of those are correct things. And the biggest one is also just she's uncomfortable and doesn't want to do it. That should be enough of a reason, not even taking into consideration the fact that it looks bad from a game sense, you know? And he does not care. He's like, oh, I get that. So do you want to sit down? Doesn't listen at all. So they sit down and he spirals and talks and goes through. He's having a lot of, you know, anxiety and insecurity around his time out there. And then they end up going back to the shelter to sleep. And this is kind of really the beginning of what feels like the end for Andy. And it feels like we're like, okay, this is not what we expected. And it felt very much like Ben last season, but not even. But it felt like he saw Ben last season, realized like, okay, like if I'm going through that, I just need to pull someone that I'm close to, talk to them. Like I need to find my Kinsey. He thought Rachel was his Kinsey, and she wasn't. And then he felt betrayed by her because she wasn't. And then that caused him to further spiral. And I think that's also just a misread on his part about what happened last season with Ben and Kinsey. Because Kinsey put herself in that situation. Ben did not pull Kinsey into it, you know? So that whole situation was just very weird and messy.
But the funniest thing, he reiterates it to everyone. But in his confessional, he says that John was cracking a coconut and everyone was cheering for him. And then I cracked a coconut and no one cheered for me. And like the shot of him like behind John, like gnawing on his coconut, like glaring, is so funny. I can't.
It's very funny, but it really is just like very deep like anxiety and insecurity and paranoia. Yeah, I think paranoia is a huge part of it. He's incredibly paranoid about everyone out there and just super on edge. Doesn't trust anyone, thinks that everyone out there is out to get him, thinks he's on the bottom, which, to be fair, if I'm out there, I probably do think similar things. I am probably overanalyzing my own game and thinking those things about myself, thinking I'm on the bottom probably constantly because you're going to be your harshest critic. But one, you can't be too hard on yourself because everyone out there is thinking the same things a lot of the time. And two, even if you think those things, you can't talk about them after a challenge in front of all the tribes and then throw your number one ally under the bus, which is where we need to go right now. Because that's what he does. He goes, bringing it back to after the challenge. He's spiraling. And he says, like, I'm on the bottom. I think I'm getting voted out tonight. But, my plan was, John.
Well, no, because Jeff asked him what was going through your head when you were laying there. And he goes, I'm being completely honest. When I was laying there, I was thinking about throwing John under the bus when we got back to camp in front of everybody. Everybody.
And you can't, one, that's bad to say just in front of your own tribe at tribal council, much less in front of every single person in the game. That's a crazy thing to say. And so it puts everyone on your tribe in a really bad position. Even if Andy and John are not in the game, well, John is not going to be in the game post-merge, but even if Andy's also not in the game post-merge, it puts the others that are in the game still in a very weird spot because of that moment. But it definitely puts, if Andy's with them, it totally screws his game, and it screws anyone who wants to align themselves with him in a bad spot where now they definitely can't.
Yeah. The whole freak out was insane. Nothing what we expected from him at all. This is the first time that I think we've read someone who we thought was going to be really strong be crazy freak out. So that was and it seems like everybody read that wrong, because most things that I saw about people's preseason analyses, they thought that Andy was going to do really good, and everyone thought that he was going to go far.
Yeah.
And he still could go far, but I don't know how he recovers from this.
A lot of ground to make up, which I will say that a bad first episode does not define Survivor, even though it's a shorter season. It's a long season.
Look at Emily.
I think that he can absolutely turn things around, and even stuff like this can actually play to a player's advantage as well, where it is such a big target on their back that it becomes a smokescreen, and people want to keep them around. And we see that all the time. Like with Q. I mean,
Q.
It's the sort we see that stuff happen so much in Survivor. And because it's happening so early, that there's the sort of thing where maybe they keep him around and then people just kind of forget about it and they don't care. So I'm not writing him off entirely, but I definitely am not confidently thinking he's going to be making it into the final 5 or anything like that right now. I need to see some serious game turnaround from Andy, and he definitely needs to compose himself and settle down and just recenter himself on this island and come have some inner peace.
Yeah. But him saying that they clapped for John when he cracked a coconut and they didn't clap for me, it's going to go down as top 10 Survivor quotes of all time.
Well, there's a lot of really good Survivor quotes, but it's definitely going to be one of the top moments. I would have a hard time imagining a moment that's going to top that. But there were so many good ones from last season. I'm hoping that this is just setting the bar for the season and we continue to get absolute bangers all season. But that was absolutely top confessional moment. It was very good.
Well, it wasn't even he said it.
Yeah, he said it both times. But the confessional, I think, was my favorite of it because you also get the clip in there. I think that clip is going to be. It's just great meme material.
Yeah. Well, as we're getting to the end of our episode, I want to briefly talk about the end of this episode, which was John getting voted out. He tried to pull something over on Annika. Didn't work. Kind of backfired because people didn't like that he was trying to pull something when it could have just been easy. But do you think that, one, that John made the right decision in trying to get out Annika instead of just playing it easy? And B, do you think the tribe made the right decision on flipping on John and getting him out instead of just getting out Andy?
Two good questions. First one's easy. I think John made a poor decision. So I'll answer that right away. I think that I do not think that that John made a good read there in targeting Annika. I don't think that anyone there was going to be willing to target Annika. I just don't think that that was ever going to play. So I think he always had to be on the, sorry, Andy, I've got to go for you, because realistically, that was his only chance at getting the votes. He never had a shot at flipping and like getting 4 votes on Annika. I just don't think that was happening. And if he really truly thought he was going to get Sam and Sierra on Annika, John, you probably deserve to go, buddy. Because I don't know. Obviously, we don't know what it was like on the island, but I just don't think he was like, it didn't ever seem like those were the vibes. Like that was the way the vote was ever going to go. It felt like it was kind of clearly always big threat John or Andy, big liability. Like it's going to go one of those two ways. Mm-hmm. So you just trying to make Annika happen out of nowhere, which I just don't even know. Like he never even gave a reason why it was Annika. That was also the thing that was weird. He was just like, she's a threat because she read books before she came out. She knows the coconuts are sweet. Like, who cares? That's not a good enough reason to vote someone out on Survivor. Okay, you wrote speeches for Obama and Hillary Clinton. You can't talk about someone being a threat because they read books. You wrote like literally some of the most important pieces of literature in American history. I don't care. So
I also think it's interesting that no one recognized him.
I think Gabe.
Well, at least no one in his tribe
or
did.
they didn't. Yeah, they didn't show it. If they did, he talked about it. He was very open about it. I don't know how in depth he was about it. Someone mentioned to him that they were like,
well, I mean, he said he did Pod Save America,
and someone, I can't remember who it was, but someone on his tribe said that I feel like your podcast is like really big, and he goes, yeah, we do well, you know. So people on his tribe, I think they knew like vaguely, but they didn't know him. I think I have a suspicion that Gabe knew who he was just because
by the way he was looking at him.
He mentioned he was a podcast host, and then they cut to Gabe, and the look on Gabe's face was just this look of like, I know who you are, and I do not trust, you know, that sort of thing. So I don't know. Maybe it was just me overanalyzing, but I kind of think maybe Gabe recognized him. But yeah, on his tribe, it wasn't as big of a deal. But they definitely still saw him as a threat. Regardless, they could definitely read him as a threat one way or another. And I don't know why he thought flipping it on Annika was a good move. So yeah, to answer your question, don't think that was a good move. The tribe, was John the right move? I guess it depends on what you value. I already said this before. I would prefer to have someone in this scenario, I would prefer to have John on my tribe than Andy, given everything that we saw in the episode. Granted, we don't have the relationships that they formed, so I don't know like all the context, right, of 3 days of knowing these people. But based on everything we saw, I would rather have John than Andy, because I feel like John feels like someone I can work with. He seems like a smart and logical and coherent individual out there on the island. He's not actively spiraling. And like I said before, I want someone who is in challenges, going to give 100%, even if they're not the most physically gifted, rather than someone who is technically better at challenges and not going to give all of their effort. So, and I don't think that Lovett was a liability in challenges either, any more so than Annika or Rachel were a liability in challenges. So I don't think that we need to call out John as being like the challenge liability. So
yeah, definitely not.
I don't really know why Lovett was the out for them. I wouldn't have made that decision personally.
I think it's just because he tried to.
I think that
he was the first one to like
was it.
ruffle feathers.
I think that really probably did him in more than the edit showed. I think if he didn't try to push Annika onto Sam and Sierra, then it might not have backfired. They might not have taken John as being a vote so seriously, and maybe the Andy thing happens. But I don't know.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, do you have anything else you want to say about the first episode of season 47 before we wrap up here?
I don't think I have anything else specifically about the episode, but I do want to hit a new segment before we close. I think it's good for us to address. We've kind of talked about some other players a little bit, but we saw last season especially, like Yanu got the spotlight a lot, and they didn't feature the other tribes very heavily in the edit. And so I think doing a little power ranking would be helpful to potentially put the focus on some other players throughout the season, and just to kind of track as we go along who we think is the favorite to win. So I'm going to be just kind of week to week going off of vibes and just my gut power rankings. So this is my week 1 power rankings, Peyton's power rankings. I'm going to go 5-1, list them off. I'm curious if you disagree or agree. And they are 100% correct, and they are non-biased at all, and they are what they are. At number 5, I have Tiana. I think that she's going to be a good player, but we didn't see a lot of her, so I can't put her any higher than 5. But I do think she's going to be good post merge. At number 4, unfortunately, I have Gabe. He's got a strong alliance, and he's got an idol. I think that puts him in the top 5 right now. So I can't discount that on him. I don't know how far he's going to make it, but as it stands right now, he's a very strong player in this game. At number 3, I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna put TK at number 3. He seems very good at challenges, very personable. Everyone on his tribe loves him, especially the guys. They got some crazy bromance going on over there. I think that if he can make it to the merge, he's going to do very well post-merge. Now, could he actually make it to the end without being viewed as too much of a threat? I don't know. But at this point in the game, I think he feels like one of the best 3 players in the game, just from pure strength perspective and personality. So I like TK a lot. And it was hard for me to put him there because he's on your team. Number 2, Sierra. We've talked a lot about Sierra. We love Sierra. We talked about her a lot in our last episode where we were doing kind of preseason thoughts. And I think a lot of that came true. We saw in this episode. We didn't see as much of her as I would have wanted, considering that the Yellow Tribe Gata was the prime focus. She was definitely on the back burner a lot, but I think that does bode well for her edit. But she has a strong alliance with Sam, which I think we saw coming.
She was getting framed a ton
in Tribal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you were saying that, but I think they were cutting around to everyone a lot. I didn't think it was necessarily favoring her as much as it was just, I think it was flipping around a lot, but I don't know. Maybe I wasn't paying as much attention. So, but I definitely think Sierra is Like I've said it before, I think that she feels like someone who sits in the final 3. Do I see her getting all the votes? I don't know. But I definitely see her in that final 3, and I still do. But at number 1, right now, I think it's Sue. I think Sue is number 1. And it's because she's got an alliance with Gabe. She's got an alliance with Caroline. She feels like she is running. What is that tribe called? Tuvu?
Lava?
No, she's on blue.
Or Lavo?
Tuku, yeah. So she feels like she's kind of running Tuku, but no one like perceives her as running Tuku, but everybody likes her. I don't know. She just seems in control, very composed, getting a great amount of edit screen time as far as like winner edit goes, whether you believe in that or not, and featured heavily in the promo material. Just seems like I don't know. I think like right now, Sue seems like a fantastic horse to bet on if you were betting on someone finishing at the end. I think like Sue is where I would be putting my money based off of this first episode. Seems like a very interesting bet because I think she can fly under the radar for a lot of the game and then sneak it out at the end. So that would be my 5. There's so many people in the game right now that it's kind of hard to narrow it down to 5. I'm curious though, is there anyone that you feel like is left out of this list or anyone that you just outright disagree?
I don't know if I'd put TK there, or at least not that high, but because we just haven't seen that much from him, and I don't know if I'd put him there solely based on just his challenge aptitude, just because of how much more reliant this season is on social game versus physical strength.
Jonathan. For me, he feels like the Jonathan,
but it doesn't happen as much
to me. Like it feels like the only real like challenge dominant person.
The tweet from Marianne that I sent you was so funny, where she was like, "I'm so happy watching this challenge made me so happy we had Jonathan on our tribe."
Yeah,
that was really funny. But anyways, so TK would probably be the only one that I would like flat out disagree with. I have to agree with Gabe, even though I hate it, but I have to agree.
Yeah, as of right now, I think it's going to change, but I do think at this moment, and I agree with you. I think TK was just kind of like a vibes one. That's me like projecting into the future a little bit more than all these others. Maybe that one's me like reading a little bit further, and the rest of these are maybe a little bit more like right now. So I agree. That one's a little bit more of a reach.
And then I understand Tiana. Like I understand her getting 5, but I just feel like people are gonna read her so quick that she is a threat, and they're not gonna let her pull what D pulled.
I think they might. I also didn't really know who to put in at 5.
Yeah,
I did think about putting Teeny at 5.
It's also hard to judge how someone ranks in the entire game when they're still split into 3 tribes, because it's hard to say, oh, this person is in a better position than this person because they're not on the same tribe. Like,
right now, it doesn't matter as much. Where it's going to matter more is going to be post-merge. So that's where right now, kind of, it's going to matter, like, really it's like the top couple, or if we have anyone that we're like really passionate about in a specific week. You know, whenever, say, Tiffany like came on our radar as being like, okay, legitimate threat to really go the distance. Like those sort of players, or eventually whenever Maria and Charlie, that duo, formed and really started gaining steam leading up to the merge. Those sort of things you can start to see leading up to the merge. I think we'll start to see that stuff in the coming weeks, but I don't think the power rankings are going to matter as much until after the merge. But for now, I think it's more vibes. But I definitely do. I wanted to mostly bring up, I think that Sue had a very good episode. We didn't talk about it a whole lot, but I do think that for all the memes that happened pre-season, Sue was great. So
Mm-hmm.
I am definitely looking out to see what's going to happen with her alliance and what's going to happen on that
I think
tribe.
I think that's one of my favorite parts of Survivor is how seemingly, like, I'm trying to think of the right words, but just how someone on the outside and how you judge them is just completely different from how they operate in Survivor. Yep. And I always think that's one of the most interesting dynamics of the game and how it brings out different aspects of people.
It's a social experiment. But we did get one judgment right. Kyle, he's just Kyle. So I think we got that.
Hey, no, I thought he was going to do well. He was my first pick. And I watched a YouTube video of someone else of the channel Idled Out.
Yeah.
Kyle is their winner pick. So
I do not think Kyle will win, but good for them.
Anything else you want to say about the premiere before we wrap up?
I don't think so, but I'm very interested to see where things go from here.
Yeah. If the rest of the season is as interesting as this first episode was, we're in for a good season.
Especially Rome and Andy have opened the doors for a lot of chaos next week, especially. Mm-hmm. So we will see.
Also, real quick, Rob Has a Podcast was mentioned. So next step is getting Idle Talk mentioned on Survivor.
Yeah, I think we got a ways to go. I think one of us would have to go on Survivor.
I was going to say one of us needs to go on Survivor.
Yeah, I think that's the only way that's going to happen.
All right. Well, if you enjoyed, we would really appreciate a rating/review. It helps our podcast grow, and you can check us out on social media on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter /X at Idle Talk Podcast, and you can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. So we'll have a fresh one for you next week after episode 2 premieres. We'll be doing these recap episodes weekly. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.